Eric Clapton is one of the most celebrated guitarists in history, but behind the legend is a man who has always seen himself as a student. From the graffiti that once declared Clapton is God to his countless reinventions across blues, rock, and pop, Clapton has always pointed back to the artists who inspired him, challenged him, and even pushed him to play harder. What makes Clapton fascinating isn't just his own genius. It's the way he openly admires others. He doesn't shy away from crediting his influences, whether they're blues pioneers from the Mississippi Delta or modern guitarists carrying the torch into a new generation. In Clapton's eyes, greatness isn't about standing alone at the top. It's about listening, learning, and celebrating those who bring something new to the music. In this countdown, we'll explore 8 of Clapton's favorite artists, from unexpected modern voices to the timeless icons who helped shape his sound. Some of these names may surprise you, but each one reveals a piece of Clapton's heart, his ear, and his respect for the craft. So let's begin with number 8, a guitarist who has stood right by Clapton's side for decades, a man Clapton himself has called one of the finest musicians alive today. Number 8, Doyle Bramhall. For years, Doyle Bramhall II has been one of the best-kept secrets in blues and rock, but not to Eric Clapton. Clapton has often said that Doyle is among the most skilled and soulful guitarists of his generation. And it's not just empty praise. Clapton trusted Bramhall enough to make him a core member of his touring band for over 2 decades, a place where few musicians have ever lasted. What makes Doyle unique in Clapton's eyes is his style. A left-handed guitarist who plays with the strings upside down, Bramhall produces tones and bends that sound almost otherworldly. Clapton has said his phrasing feels unpredictable yet always true, giving their live duets a sense of danger and discovery. Night after night, Doyle forced Clapton to stay sharp, and that was exactly how Clapton liked it. Beyond the technical fireworks, Clapton admires Bramhall's songwriting and voice. Unlike many guitar virtuosos, Doyle isn't just about speed or licks. His songs carry the kind of weight and honesty Clapton has always gravitated toward. When they performed together, the chemistry wasn't just about guitars trading solos. It was about 2 storytellers speaking the same language. In interviews, Clapton has called Doyle one of the most complete musicians I've ever worked with. That's high praise from a man who shared stages with nearly every legendary guitarist of the last half-century. And in many ways, Clapton's endorsement helped bring Doyle to a wider audience, finally earning him the recognition he deserved. Bramhall himself has often said that playing alongside Clapton is both terrifying and inspiring, knowing that the man he grew up idolizing now treats him as an equal. That kind of mutual respect is rare, but it's what makes their bond so special. For Clapton, Doyle Bramhall II isn't just a bandmate. He's proof that the blues is alive and evolving, carried forward by musicians who don't just imitate the past, they reinvent it. Number 7, Ed Sheeran. When people think of Eric Clapton's favorite musicians, they usually imagine blues icons, guitar heroes, or classic rock titans. That's why his admiration for Ed Sheeran caught so many fans by surprise. Sheeran may not shred with a Stratocaster, but Clapton has praised him as a great talent, and even collaborated with him on the song I Will Be There in 2016. To Clapton, Sheeran represents something rare in modern pop, a songwriter who balances mass appeal with sincerity. Clapton has always respected artists who can strip everything down to its essentials, and Sheeran's ability to captivate stadiums with just an acoustic guitar and a loop pedal left a strong impression. Watching Sheeran perform reminded Clapton of the folk tradition he grew up on, where one person, one guitar, and one voice could carry an audience all night long. Their collaboration also highlighted Clapton's willingness to bridge generations. At the time, Clapton was already a rock elder statesman, while Sheeran was still climbing toward global superstardom. Yet Clapton saw past the age gap and pop veneer, recognizing in Sheeran the same drive that fueled his own rise decades earlier. Critics sometimes scoffed at Clapton's admiration, but he was never one to follow expectations. To him, Sheeran's gift wasn't about flashy guitar solos or blues authenticity. It was about honesty. Sheeran's lyrics of love, heartbreak, and vulnerability struck Clapton as deeply human, and that, more than anything, is what he's always valued in music. Sheeran himself was humbled by Clapton's support. In interviews, he has spoken about how surreal it felt to not only meet one of his idols, but to write and record with him. For Sheeran, it was validation from one of the greatest to ever do it. For Clapton, it was proof that true artistry can shine even in the world of modern pop. Clapton's respect for Ed Sheeran shows that his ear is always open. He isn't stuck in the past. Instead, he recognizes greatness in unexpected places, even among artists half his age. And in Sheeran, Clapton saw something that mattered to him above all else: the timeless ability to move people with nothing but a song. Number 6, George Harrison. Eric Clapton's admiration for George Harrison went far beyond music. It was a friendship, a rivalry, and at times, even a tangled love story. Among the Beatles, it was George who resonated most deeply with Clapton. The two shared not just a mutual respect for each other's guitar playing, but also a personal bond that endured through triumphs, scandals, and decades of change. Clapton admired George's subtlety. While Lennon and McCartney dominated headlines with their songwriting, Harrison quietly pushed the boundaries of what a guitar could do in a band setting. Clapton once said Harrison's guitar work on tracks like Something and Here Comes the Sun had a melodic sensitivity that few players could match. To Clapton, George didn't need to be flashy. His playing spoke volumes through understatement. Their collaboration became legendary with While My Guitar Gently Weeps. George invited Clapton to record the searing solo that gave the song its emotional weight. Clapton initially hesitated, not wanting to intrude on Beatles territory, but George insisted. The result was one of rock's most iconic guitar moments, a testament to the trust and admiration between the two men. Of course, their story wasn't without complications. Clapton fell deeply in love with George's wife, Pattie Boyd, inspiring the passionate ballad Layla. While the situation strained their friendship, George and Eric never allowed bitterness to fully eclipse their bond. In fact, Harrison later joked that Clapton could have Pattie as long as he still had Clapton as a friend. That ability to forgive and maintain respect spoke volumes about their relationship. Even after George's passing in 2001, Clapton remained one of his loudest champions. He organized the concert for George, bringing together an all-star lineup to honor Harrison's life and legacy. For Clapton, it wasn't just about celebrating a Beatle, it was about paying tribute to a brother. For Clapton, George Harrison wasn't just another musician he admired. He was family, a quiet innovator whose songs, spirit, and friendship left a permanent mark on Clapton's life. Number 5, Gary Clark Jr. When Eric Clapton first heard Gary Clark Jr., he knew immediately that the future of the blues was in good hands. For decades, Clapton had worried that the genre he loved might fade into nostalgia, trapped in the past. But Gary Clark Jr. wasn't just repeating history, he was reshaping it. His blend of traditional blues, grit with rock, soul, and even hip-hop rhythms caught Clapton's ear and convinced him that the next generation could carry the torch forward. Clapton wasted no time bringing Gary into his circle. He invited him to perform at the Crossroads Guitar Festival, the legendary gathering Clapton curates to showcase the world's greatest guitarists. Sharing the stage with Clapton, B.B. King, and Buddy Guy might intimidate most young musicians, but Clark held his own with ease. His raw tone, heavy bends, and fearless stage presence left audiences stunned, and Clapton grinning with approval. What Clapton admired most was Clark's refusal to stay in one box. Much like Clapton himself in the 1960s, Clark blurred the lines between blues, rock, and pop, creating a sound that could reach new listeners without losing its roots. For Clapton, this was essential. He had spent his entire career fighting to keep the blues alive. And in Gary, he saw someone with the authenticity and originality to make it thrive in the modern world. Their connection wasn't just professional. Clapton often spoke warmly about Gary's humility and dedication. Despite his rising fame, Clark carried himself with the same grounded spirit that Clapton valued in his own heroes. That mix of talent and modesty reminded Clapton of the blues greats he grew up idolizing. Clark, for his part, has repeatedly called Clapton a guiding light. He has spoken about the surreal feeling of being embraced by someone he once studied on records. Their bond shows the beautiful cycle of influence in music. The student becomes the master, and the master recognizes greatness in the new student. For Clapton, Gary Clark Jr. proved that the blues wasn't just history. It was alive, evolving, and still capable of reaching the hearts of millions. And in Gary, Clapton saw not just a favorite musician, but the future of the music he loved most. Number 4, Robert Johnson. For Eric Clapton, there is no name more sacred in the blues than Robert Johnson. He has called Johnson the most important blues singer that ever lived, a statement that leaves no doubt about the weight of his influence. To Clapton, Johnson wasn't just a musician, he was the origin point, the mysterious figure whose haunting songs still echo through every guitar riff and lyric that came after. Clapton first discovered Johnson as a young guitarist in England long before he had made a name for himself. Those recordings from the 1930s, scratchy and distant, carried a raw intensity that shocked him. Songs like Crossroad Blues and Hellhound on My Trail didn't just tell stories, they conjured entire worlds of longing, fear, and despair. Clapton later admitted that listening to Johnson was almost unbearable because the emotion felt so pure and overwhelming. What fascinated Clapton was the mythology around Johnson. The stories of him selling his soul to the devil at a Mississippi crossroads only added to the mystique. But for Clapton, the truth didn't matter as much as the sound itself. Johnson's guitar playing was so intricate it sounded like two musicians at once. His voice carried both fragility and fury. To Clapton, it was a perfect storm, and proof that genius can emerge from the unlikeliest of places. Johnson's music became Clapton's guide. He covered Crossroads with Cream, transforming Johnson's lament into one of rock's greatest anthems. Later in his career, he recorded the tribute album, Me and Mr. Johnson, a love letter to the man who inspired him most. For Clapton, paying homage wasn't optional. It was a responsibility to keep Johnson's spirit alive for new generations. Even after decades of success, Clapton has remained humble when speaking about Johnson. He often describes himself as a mere interpreter, standing in the shadow of a man whose short life left behind only 29 songs, but an infinite legacy. To Clapton, everything he ever played traced back to Robert Johnson. For Clapton, Johnson was more than a favorite artist. He was the foundation, the haunting voice from the past that gave the blues its soul and Clapton his lifelong purpose. Number 3, B.B. King. If Robert Johnson was Eric Clapton's ghostly guide from the past, then B.B. King was the living embodiment of the blues right beside him. Clapton not only admired B.B. King as a guitarist and singer, he adored him as a friend. Their bond went beyond influence. It was a lifelong connection rooted in mutual respect and a shared mission to keep the blues alive. Clapton often said that B.B.'s guitar, Lucille, could sing as much as it could wail. What impressed him most wasn't the speed or flash, but the way B.B. bent a single note to make it cry, moan, or smile. That kind of emotional depth shaped Clapton's own playing, teaching him that fewer notes, played with feeling, could hit harder than a wall of sound. Their friendship turned into collaboration in 2000 with the Grammy-winning album Riding with the King. The record wasn't just a duet. It was a celebration of the blues itself. Clapton described the experience as a dream come true, saying he still couldn't believe he had the honor of trading licks and verses with the man he considered the true king of the blues. B.B. King, for his part, had endless praise for Clapton. He once called him the man who carries the flame, acknowledging that Clapton's success had brought the blues to audiences who might never have discovered it otherwise. That recognition meant everything to Clapton, who had always felt more like a disciple than a superstar. Even in later years, Clapton spoke with deep affection about B.B., describing him as not only a mentor, but one of the warmest souls he had ever met. When B.B. passed away in 2015, Clapton released a heartfelt tribute saying he was a beacon for all of us who love this music. For Clapton, B.B. King wasn't just a favorite musician. He was family, a teacher, a friend, and a reminder that the blues is as much about heart as it is about the guitar. Number 2, Jimi Hendrix. When Jimi Hendrix exploded onto the London music scene in 1966, Eric Clapton was already being hailed as God for his guitar playing. But the night Hendrix joined Cream on stage at a small club, everything changed. Hendrix tore into Killing Floor at a blistering speed, leaving Clapton so stunned that he reportedly walked off stage to collect himself. For the first time in years, Clapton wasn't the most electrifying guitarist in the room, and he knew it. But instead of bitterness, Clapton felt awe. He later admitted that Hendrix's playing was otherworldly, combining technical mastery with wild unpredictability. Hendrix bent the rules of the guitar until it sounded like an entirely new instrument. For Clapton, watching him was equal parts intimidating and inspiring. It pushed him to reimagine what was possible. What made Hendrix special to Clapton wasn't just his speed or showmanship, it was the soul behind every note. Clapton admired the way Hendrix's playing seemed to mirror his emotions in real time. Every bend, every feedback squeal felt alive. To Clapton, Hendrix wasn't just a virtuoso, he was a channel for something bigger. Their relationship quickly grew into mutual respect. Hendrix often praised Clapton's blues roots, while Clapton stood in awe of Hendrix's innovation. They weren't rivals in the bitter sense, they were equals who recognized greatness in each other. Sadly, Hendrix's sudden death in 1970 cut short what could have been decades of collaboration and friendship. Clapton has spoken often about how Hendrix's passing left a hole in music. He even admitted that he had bought Hendrix a left-handed Stratocaster as a gift, planning to give it to him the day after he died. That guitar remained a painful reminder of what was lost and of how deeply Hendrix had touched him in such a short time. For Clapton, Hendrix was both a shockwave and a gift, proof that even the greatest still have something new to learn when genius walks into the room. Number 1, Duane Allman. Of all the musicians Eric Clapton ever played with, none left a deeper impression than Duane Allman. Their time together was brief, but the music they created remains immortal. In 1970, during the recording sessions for Layla and other assorted love songs, Clapton and Allman discovered they were kindred spirits. From the moment they picked up their guitars, it was as if they had been playing together for years. Clapton often said that Duane had a slide guitar tone like no one else in the world. His notes didn't just cut through a mix. They soared, howled, and wept with a voice all their own. On songs like Layla and Key to the Highway, their guitars wove together in a way that felt less like two men playing and more like a single conversation between souls. What struck Clapton most was Allman's intensity. Duane didn't waste time chasing fame or image. He poured everything into the music, whether in the studio or on stage. That purity of purpose reminded Clapton of his own heroes like Robert Johnson, and it reignited his belief in the power of the blues as a spiritual force. Sadly, their bond was cut tragically short when Duane Allman died in a motorcycle accident at just 24 years old. Clapton was devastated. He often spoke about how it felt like losing a brother and how their collaboration had given him one of the greatest musical highs of his life. For Clapton, Layla became more than just a love song. It became a monument to Duane's genius. Over the years, Clapton has never stopped honoring Allman. In interviews, tributes, and live performances, he has credited Duane with pushing him to new heights and inspiring some of his most iconic work. Even decades later, Clapton's voice carries a tinge of grief when he speaks about what could have been if Allman had lived longer. For Clapton, Duane Allman wasn't just a collaborator. He was a revelation, the rare musician who could stand beside him as an equal, and in doing so, helped create some of the greatest music of their lives. Eric Clapton's story has always been written through the voices of others, from Robert Johnson's haunting blues to B.B. King's bending notes, from George Harrison's melodic grace to Jimi Hendrix's explosive fire. Clapton found inspiration in every corner of music. These weren't just idols. They were mirrors, challenges, and companions that pushed him to discover new parts of himself. What makes this list so fascinating is the range. Clapton never confined himself to one era or one sound. He embraced modern talents like John Mayer, Ed Sheeran, Gary Clark Jr., and Doyle Bramhall II, proving that his ear is always tuned to the future. Yet at the same time, he remained rooted in the giants of the past, the legends who taught him that music is about honesty, emotion, and truth. Together, these 8 names form a map of Clapton's soul. They reveal a man who, despite his own towering legacy, has always seen himself as a student first and a master second. That humility is part of why Clapton has endured for so long. He never stopped listening, he never stopped learning, and maybe that's the secret. The greatest guitarists aren't the ones who stand alone at the top. They're the ones who know how to carry the voices of others with them, blending the past, present, and future into something timeless. So now it's your turn. Which of Clapton's favorite artists surprised you the most? And who do you think belongs on his list? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the conversation and the music alive.